Most investors will tell you that finding cash flowing rentals right now are virtually impossible. They'll say that market's too competitive, that interest rates are too high, and that investors with cash are just buying up everything. And they'll tell you that you have to find your own deals to really find the cash flow, and honestly, that's just too time intensive and unrealistic for most people. But you should know this: finding cash flowing rentals are not as hard as you might think. They're just not found where most people are looking. The properties I look for, they're not hidden. They aren't even off market. They are on the MLS, being ignored. So today, I'm going to walk you through 6 specific ways that I find cash flowing rental properties that some investors just overlook. Let's go. Hi, my name is Franchini, and welcome back to my channel where I teach aspiring real estate investors how to be successful with their very first rental property. If you are an aspiring real estate investor and you're looking for coaching on your first deal, you can get more information on what I can offer you on my website, brickbybrickwealth.com. All right, let's get into it. Here's a mistake almost everyone makes when they're just starting out. Maybe they're searching Zillow too much like an investor. They're running those filters so they can get those perfect numbers. Maybe they're looking for turnkey, or they're looking for a real big gut job for that value add. But one thing they all have in common is everyone seems to want max cash flow on day one. And when they don't find exactly what they're looking for, they assume the opportunities are gone and there are no more cash flowing rentals anywhere in the whole United States of America. But the truth here is, those investors that are doing that, they're competing with the wrong people. So the first shift I made when looking for cash flowing rental properties was changing who I'm competing against. So number 1, compete with the small mom and pop investors, not those big mega investors. See, most big investors are fighting each other. They're looking for the absolute worst looking house on the block so they can sink $50,000 into it and flip it. They're paying all cash. They're buying from wholesalers with high competition. They got people knocking on doors and they are spending thousands of dollars a month in advertising campaigns. Have you gotten a postcard in the mail for your house saying, "I'll buy your house all cash. Call 1-800, I'll buy your house"? Well, that's coming from a big mega investor. Those postcards and similar things like it are expensive marketing campaigns, and they're meant to get the worst houses for the cheapest price. So if you're looking for the same properties that those people are looking for, and you don't have the skill set and those deep pockets, and especially if real estate isn't your full-time job, you're just competing against people you won't win against. Keep in mind, those guys are also able to pay more for the house than you can because they get their materials and their labor for much cheaper. They have economies of scale for their real estate portfolio, and most of them are flipping. They're also paying all cash and they're closing in less than 10 days. So if you don't have all cash and you're just a regular mom and pop investor with a conventional 20% down loan or DSCR loan, you aren't going to win. So you just got to stop fighting those mega investors. And if you were lucky enough to win one of those properties, you likely overpaid. And you'll find that out in the end when you won't cash flow or you're over leveraged. Another investor you're fighting against are the insanely rich people. They'll pay whatever because they are buying real estate for appreciation, losses, and tax benefits. They have tons of money and they don't care about cash flow. They'll pay asking. And on top of that, to really bring it home, foreign buyers are ruling the US market. In the past year, international buyers, people who are not residents or citizens of the United States, have purchased 78,100 homes worth $56 billion. That's a 44% increase over last year. Nearly half of those buyers bought their properties with all cash compared to 28% of domestic buyers. And that means more competition for us, for the little guys, for the little investors, for the owner-occupieds. Now, side note, if Trump wants to actually help the housing market, I'd say he should stop allowing foreigners to buy properties on U.S. soil. Many other countries already do this, and I think it could be a good start to getting more Americans in homes. But that's another topic, so moving on. Okay, so now we know who's buying up all these properties. It's conglomerate investors, it's rich people, it's companies with big pockets, and they're looking for the heaviest ROI, the biggest return on their investment. And usually that means buying properties that require heavy renovation. So no, I don't want to door knock properties physically in the worst part of town. I don't want to wholesale and buy properties all cash if I don't have to. I want to buy good houses in quality neighborhoods. I want safe investments that also cash flow, ones that take up less time and have less competition to get. I'm looking for grandma's house. Specifically, I look for dated owner-occupied houses. These aren't majorly distressed properties. They aren't falling apart. They're just old. I'm talking 1950s oak cabinets and avocado green bathroom tile and blue shag carpet. But you know what grandma has always done? She's always had a top tier, locally well-known HVAC company service her HVAC over the past 30 years. She's had the best handyman in town fix everything quality with no shortcuts. There aren't any rotted out floors at grandma's house under her bathtub. There aren't rats or raccoons in the attic. Grandma's house hasn't been a rental for 20 years with problems getting duct taped by slumlords. Nope. It's just grandma's house, still stuck in the 1970s. And it needs some cosmetic overhaul. When I fix up grandma's house, am I going to be raking in the cash flow at $1,000 a month? No, but what am I going to have? I'm going to have a quality house in a quality neighborhood that attracts quality tenants who have six-figure incomes and buy Pottery Barn furniture. So what am I telling you here? I'm saying stop competing with the big guys for these home run deals and start competing with the little guys. Most investors, they skip these deals because they don't have the big cash flow numbers on day one. But I'll take steady rent growth, appreciation, and lower tenant turnover all day long, especially when I'm not having to overpay to get in. All right, the second way that I find cash flowing rental properties that investors are often overlooking is changing the bedroom count. This one's really simple, but it's the easiest, the cheapest, and it makes the biggest difference. And no, I'm not talking about adding on square footage to your house. Sometimes it might be a formal living room or a formal dining room that you're converting into an extra bedroom. Sometimes it's a bonus room or maybe an attic that you can convert. Maybe it's a finished basement. And all you're really doing is maybe putting up a wall and adding a door. Did you know that if you could increase your bedroom count by just one bedroom, it could increase your rental amount by $100, $200, or $300 a month, and it could add $30,000 or more in instant equity to the value of your home. This is one of the best ways that my students have been able to increase their equity and their cash flow with their very first rental property. We did this ourselves just a couple years ago. The property was an 1,100 square foot, 2-bedroom, 1.5 bathroom house, which I knew was unusual for the area. When I saw it on the MLS, it was contingent, and I told my realtor, call up the listing agent and see if the buyer is still going through or if the property is falling out of escrow. My agent was definitely reluctant to call because it was already contingent, but I urged him to call because you never know. Turns out it was a good thing that I made him call because the listing agent told him that the deal was about to fall through and she was going to put it right back on the market. So we got a showing, and lo and behold, I walk in that house and what do you know? It used to actually be a 3-bedroom, 1.5 bathroom house. But the current owner, grandma, who had lived there for, I don't remember, 20 or so years, didn't have anyone else living with her. She wanted a formal dining room so her family could come over and visit and have these big dinners. Remember, the house is 1,100 square feet, so the dining room that was already there wasn't massively large. So she took out the 3rd bedroom so she could have a huge dining room table. Well, we bought the house, and for $400, my husband put up a wall and a door. We got an extra $200 a month in rent from that $400 wall and door, and it added $30,000 in equity instantly to the value of our home. Not everyone out there is looking for that value add, but that one is my favorite kind. See, rents aren't exactly like housing prices. The rents don't only increase the bigger the square footage is. It also increases the bedroom count. A 3-bedroom rents for significantly more than a 2-bedroom house, even if the house is the same size. But most investors aren't ever seeing these potential deals because they're filtering them out on their filters on Zillow or Realtor.com before they even see it. They set their search to 3 bedrooms and up and completely ignore everything else. I don't. I look at layout, not just the listing. If there is room for another bedroom without structural changes, I'm doing it. This is one of those value adds that doesn't require you to be handy. It doesn't require you to be a contractor, and it doesn't require a full renovation. It just requires looking at the house differently than everyone else. All right, the third way that I find rental properties that cash flow that a lot of investors overlook is by paying attention to where the washer and dryer are located. A lot of older homes have the washing machine and the dryer stuffed somewhere in the kitchen because a long time ago, there was a washing machine and no dryer, and people would hang their clothes on the line outside. Eventually, dryers became in fashion, and sometimes they were put in the carport, sometimes they were put in the garage if there was a garage, or sometimes they were shoved somewhere randomly in the kitchen. Maybe you've seen a picture of a kitchen or been in a house where the washing machine is on one side of the kitchen and the dryer is on the other side. Those things definitely weren't done at the same time. So when investors see a bad layout like that with the washer and dryer, they immediately think, well, this house has a bad layout. No tenant's going to want that. And they move on. What I'm looking for when I see that is there space nearby that I can move the washing machine and dryer so they can be together somewhere, not right next to the dishwasher, like a mudroom or a hall closet, a laundry nook just off the kitchen, or what's on the other side of the wall in the kitchen? Maybe I can put the wash machine and dryer in that room. Where's the utility room at? Can I move it there? If I can move the washing machine and the dryer completely out of the kitchen, I can open up a big portion of that space and completely change how the kitchen functions. You get more counter space now. Maybe you even get a peninsula or an island. People really lack counter space when their washer and dryer are in the kitchen. Moving those items is a functional game changer and really increases the rent on that house as well. And yes, with those properties, I am doing a kitchen renovation. But that does not mean I'm going to gut the entire house. I'm not necessarily doing the bathrooms, and that doesn't mean that something is wrong with the walls or the baseboards or even the flooring. If you have to choose between renovating the kitchen or renovating a couple bathrooms, always choose the kitchen. That's where tenants spend their time. That's what looks nice. That's what makes the house feel updated. That's what their guests are going to see the most. And as we all know, the kitchen is the center of the house. So instead of just skipping these properties because the layout's awkward and no one wants a washing machine next to their stove, I look for the opportunity and see where can I move these items. The fourth way that I find cash flowing rental properties that investors often overlook is by clicking on the listings that they're already scrolling right past. I'm talking bad photos, dark pictures, messy houses, toilet seats lifted up, pictures of the ceiling and the fan, short, lazy descriptions that tell you absolutely nothing. Fuzzy photos picked, you get where I'm going with this? Bad photos. A lot of investors see bad pictures, they see messy houses, or they see a lack of pictures, and they just scroll right on past. They think the deal must be bad. Something's wrong with the house. But just because there are bad photos or missing photos doesn't mean the property is a bad deal. It's just bad marketing. It means fewer eyeballs. It means fewer showings. It means fewer offers. It means less competition for me. And all that works in your favor. Because I don't care if the pictures are bad on the MLS. I'm like, yes, let's go see it. I care about location. Where is it at in the city? Is it in a good neighborhood? Is there a functional layout or can I make one? And will the numbers work after the obvious issues are fixed? Some of my favorite deals have come from listings where the pictures looked really bad online, but in person it was just outdated or poorly lit. If you're willing to look past the presentation and actually analyze the property, you'll find opportunities that a lot of investors aren't even considering. The fifth way that I find cash flowing rentals that other investors often overmiss is by taking a look at under market rent listings. See, a lot of investors see a property that's currently rented with a tenant inside that has under market rent and they move on because they want instant cash flow. They want a vacant house. They want perfect numbers on day one. They don't want to wait. I look at these properties very differently. Most of the time, these under market rent properties are rented by tenants who have been there a really long time. They've been there for years and the landlord just never really raised the rent. And because the lease transfers with the sale of the property, the buyer just isn't seeing cash flow there. They're seeing a big issue. Some of these deals, and I don't mean all, but some of these deals can be worth buying. First, you can see how the tenant lives. If the house is a complete trash pit and the rent is below market, you can bet your butt that listing is going to sit there for a long time. But make your offer. The seller says no, just keep following up. One day he'll come around and sell. These are the properties you can negotiate a lower price on because of the added risk. When you buy it, the tenant doesn't get to renew the lease. Adios for them. Renovate and re-rent. If the tenant does keep the property nice, well, then that's awesome. It's still under market though, so get a better price from the seller. And when the lease is up, it's time for a major rent increase to the tenant. Or they can find a new place and you can rent it to someone else. Or perhaps the tenant will be willing to stay with a rent increase if maybe you do a couple cosmetic upgrades. I've seen that happen more often than not. Buying tenant-occupied properties is where being patient is the leverage. I'm not looking to double the rent overnight. I'm looking for steady, predictable rent increases over time in good areas with good tenants. I'm in it for the long haul. But alas, most investors will skip these deals because there's no big cash flow today. And that's better for me. And the sixth way that I find cash flowing rental properties that some investors often overlook is by not ignoring overpriced listings that have long days on the market. Most investors see a high price and long days on the market, underwrite the deal on their spreadsheet with the list price, see no cash flow, and move on, thinking there is never to be cash flow seen again at that property. I don't do that. I still make an offer, and then I follow up again, and then I follow up again. You get what I'm saying? You don't give up hope. Sellers don't reject offers forever. Overpriced listings will just sit and sit and sit until the seller comes around. It might even take the listing to go expired and then come back on the market with a new realtor with a new price for it to sit and sit again at their overinflated price until they finally accept your offer. And when that happens, a lot of times it can be the buyer who stays in touch that wins the deal. Buyer that isn't aggressive or pushy or rude. The one who is patient. I'm not always trying to win a negotiation in one shot. It depends on the seller, it depends on the situation. What I want to do in these cases is to position myself as the obvious choice when the seller is ready. A lot of investors don't have the patience to do that. I do. So if you're struggling to find cash flowing deals, I hope you've been listening. And the problem isn't necessarily the market. With inflation continuing to go up and wages not going up, especially not at the same rate inflation is going up, we're going to be in this tough market for a while with high prices and unaffordability. So what does that mean? You just aren't going to buy anything anymore? No, you just need some different tactics. Cash flow isn't always found chasing the same deals everyone's looking for. We're trying to be that top dog, get that home run deal with that money cash flow on day one. It's created by looking where most investors aren't willing to look and doing the things that some people aren't willing to do. If you're watching this thinking, okay, well, that sounds great, but what markets do all these strategies and tactics actually work in? Well, I already have a video breaking that down step by step. I'll link it right here above and also in that info dumpster down below. If this video helped you see rental properties differently, please do all the things. Hit like, comment down below, say hi, and subscribe to my channel. Your interaction really helps the algorithm push this video out to other people who are looking for the same information right now. And you might not ever see me again. So just do it. Hit subscribe and ring the bell. And I'll see you in the next video. And until next time, keep building your wealth brick by brick.